minimum of 7.5 overall and a minimum score of 7 in each of the 4 bands. So you have to get at least a 7 in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And it's out of 9. So a lot of people struggle with especially writing, because we are fine with reading, but when was the last time you wrote a comprehension or anything like that? So it's important that you take this part seriously, because it can be a big stumbling block for a lot of people. The OET is slightly different in that some people say it's a bit more straightforward. So it's an English language test as well, but it's profession dependent. So the exam will be done according to your profession. So, you know, in the writing section, you may be told to write a clinic letter or something like that. So it's nice that they've added that. And yes, so it's the same: reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and you have to attain a grade B in at least all of the 4 subsets. If you do not attain this, you cannot move to the next part. So this is the most important first step, is that you need to clear the English requirements. So once you've cleared your English requirements, you need to set up an account with the GMC. It's free. And all you need to do is go onto the GMC website and register an account with them. It's free. And then the next step would be, you need to verify your primary medical qualification. So, you know, to get more information about this, you can go to the ECFMG website, and the steps are it's very clear as what you need to do. But basically, you need to upload your register an account, and you'll be asked to pay for that. So it's about $190. Yeah, so it's over $100 that you'll be required to pay to get an ECFMG account. And then you'll be asked to upload like a photograph and your passport, and then you will have to get your documents verified by ECFMG, and for each document it's about $90. So that's where the cost, you know, you have to be ready to let go of a little bit of money to start with. But so remember, the GMC account is free to register, but for ECFMG you need to pay. So once you've registered an account with the GMC and you've had your documents verified, so it depends on your university how long it will take for the verification, because ECFMG will contact your university, and then they verify through ECFMG. So it might take a week, it could take 2 weeks, you know, yeah. Then once you've passed your English test, once you've registered an account online with the GMC, and once you've verified your documents with ECFMG, you now do something that is called Blab. So it's called the Professional and Linguistic Assessment Board test. It is going to change in another 2 years or so, and they're now going to start calling it UK MLA, so the UK Medical Licensing Assessment. And this is not going to affect us foreign medical graduates. It will be Blab. It's the same thing, but I think they're proposing that they're going to start including the British medical graduates to also do this assessment to get licensing. So don't worry so much if you do come to apply in a few years and the name has changed. It's still, the spirit is still the same. So the test in itself is it's there to provide a route for international medical graduates to demonstrate that we have the necessary skills to practice in the UK. So it's a very standard test, and it consists of 2 parts. So the first part, step 1, is an MCQ paper, and it's got 180 single best answer questions, and it's a 3-hour paper. And the testing is done in many different countries. So like Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Pakistan, India. They don't have a center in Kenya, unfortunately. Yeah, so once you've passed your English, certified your documents, you can go online and book for a test. So before COVID, or so before this year, things might change, but currently the exams run 4 times a year in the UK. And in some international centers, which is March, June, September, and November. And then the international centers, so as I mentioned before, you know, in Dubai, Sudan, in Nigeria, they run 2 times a year. So that is in March and November. And the cost for this first exam is about £239, which comes to about, as exchange rate for today is about 33,500 Kenya shillings. So when you're booking these tests, you need to have your money at hand because the testing spots go very fast. So yeah, that's something important to keep in mind. So as I said before you book the exam, which you book through the online account that you have with the GMC, you need to have an acceptable past medical qualification. You need to have passed the English language, and of course you need to have the GMC account. Part 2 of the exam is a little bit more tricky. So it's the OSCE, so it's the Objective Structural and Clinical Exam. So there are 18 stations, but this changes, and I think they are going to change it again because of COVID and trying to move away from a lot of face-to-face, and they're going to add more types of stations in this. So each station is 8 minutes long, and you have 2 minutes to read the scenario. So I remember doing this, and this was a bit of a tough one. You're so nervous, your mouth is so dry. They have actors there, yeah, so you can only book step 2 once you've passed step 1. So before COVID, the tests were very regular, and they run throughout the year except in August, in the summer, and in December. And they're only offered in one place in Manchester in the UK. So if you need to do your Blab 2, you will have to fly to the UK to do it. It's only offered in one place. So currently with COVID, they had stopped the exams in March and they canceled everything, and they've only opened up again in August, September time. And they're running reduced classes and they're running reduced exams. So there's a big backlog. They have to go through all the people they canceled in between March and now. So there's a bit of a backlog, but everyone's hoping that it will pick up again and it will be back to the way it was. So there are 2 exams a day. So there's a morning session and an afternoon session. And they're very regular. So as I said, except for August and December. And the cost of this exam is £875. So which is about, as of exchange rate of today, it's about 122,700. It seems a bit dear, but as compared to USMLE, this is much less than USMLE. The costs go up every year, but by just a little bit. So that's about how much it costs. So after you pass the results come within a month for both the exams. After you pass both of them, you proceed now to get your registration with the GMC. So they will request for information from you. So according to your situation. So for me, because I didn't have a license in another country, my registration was very, very straightforward. It took a week and a half. I sent my documents, scanned my degree and my internship certificates and my passport. And then after a week and a half, I was requested to appear at the GMC Center to verify my documents, and that was it. And I paid about £200, which is about 28,500 Kenya shillings for that. But I think it's a little bit different if you hold a medical license. They may require a certificate of good standing from your country of practice. Require as well as your primary medical qualifications and other things. So once you pass Blab 2, they will require documents from you. So, it's different for everybody. They require different things from everybody, but it's very straightforward. Yeah. So as I said, once they grant you your registration, you have to present yourself to the GMC officers to verify your documents. I don't know how that is working now with COVID, but I'm sure things will go back to the way they were. So just a few things that I think you must consider is that you need to start, if this is what you're thinking about doing, you need to plan early and plan well. Because the costs, you have to plan for the cost of the exams. You have to plan for the cost of visas. So you can come do your exams on a visitor visa. So we know that some of these visas can be a bit troublesome. They require you to have money in your account for a certain amount of time. The flights, you have to have accommodation when you're here in the UK. So it's something that if you're going to do this, my advice would be plan early and plan well, because that is what catches people out as well, is the financial part. You're halfway through it and then, things go a little haywire. Second point is that for the first step, there's a lot of free resources online, like on Facebook, and there are lots of question banks. So that is fine. But for Blab 2, it is especially important to do a course which are run here in the UK. And those courses can go for between 400 to 600 pounds for a course for training for the second step. So you have to factor this in to your budget. And because step 2 is done here in the UK, you have to factor in the fact that you will have to come and stay for a little bit as you continue your course. So as I said, the process can take between 6 months to 2 years to complete. So for me, I was very fortunate, and I was able to complete it in 7 months. So it just depends on how quickly you can get your visas, availability of test places, and all those things. So as I said before, if you want more information, there's a lot of information on the GMC website. So you can go to the GMC online, and it will tell you about all the eligibility criteria that you need to apply for the exams. But as I've already mentioned, it's very straightforward and not very complicated, and just needs good planning and good planning ahead. So there, as I mentioned, there are academies and courses that you can use. So I think because of COVID, a lot of these academies have started offering their courses online. So perhaps in the future, you may not have to fly here to do the courses, but you can do them online and then fly here to do your exam. You still have to fly here to do your exam. We have a lot of Facebook groups, which are a very good resource for materials and things like that. So if anyone is interested, let me know, and we can grant you access to some of these Facebook groups where we have a lot of study material, and people form study groups on these groups. And it's such an amazing resource for us foreign medical graduates. Yeah. So career development, and that I'll leave to Francis to continue, but I can tell you that there are many jobs. There's enough work for all of us. There's a lot of shortages here, and there's a lot of work for everybody. So yeah, come one, come all. Thank you so much. If you want any more information, that's my email. And yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Gavani, for that very precise session. We have learned a lot, and we're looking forward to interacting with you further in the coming months and years. So I had already introduced Dr. Francis, so he can go ahead and share his slides and begin his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just trying to share the screen, 1 minute. I apologize. Evelyn, I'll just forward you my slides and then you can run them for me. Is that okay? I'll just forward them to your email. 1 minute. I'll just send you this final talk on your email. They've come through. Tell me when you access them.
Not yet.
Okay, just refresh it. Received them?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So you'll have to share your screen and then I'll have to do the talking. Sorry.
It's okay, it's okay.
Thank you very much. You can launch the PowerPoint now. So I wish to apologize to everybody. I've had some bit of technological issues, but as you can see, we've been able to overcome them. The motivation for giving this talk to you guys was mainly on the invite of Evelyn, but the reason is because we are aware of what's happening at home and hearing of doctors who, after investing in yourself for all these years, then you end up being jobless. So we hope that by giving you this experience and our, like a roadmap, then you can be able to plan better so that you're not caught up with the situations happening that are beyond your control. Next slide. I have no conflicts of interest, but I just wish to say that this talk will be based on my own experiences and reflections. And just remember that whatever we tell you, my journey or Gadoni's journey will never be like yours. Everybody has a different starting point, different priorities, commitments. We have family that we support, and we all follow different paths and we all have different visions. All I will say is that all your visions and pathways are all valid. We are both members of the Kenyan Doctors in the UK group. And at this point, I wish to mention that Dr. Omar Tayari, one of our own, and Dr. Emily Cheserem will join us at the end to do a question and answer session. They are within the attendees. Next slide. So I'll reflect on my own journey, and then I'll give you some tips about internship center choices, because some of them have implications on, for example, if you want to come to the UK or go to the States, then different internship centers may give you different strengths. Then look at some career options overall. Look at some international destinations. I'm glad Gadoni has already gone through the UK pathway. And then just some big brother advice on key considerations while making career choices. If I was in your stage now that I am here now, what would I do differently? And then point you to some resources, then we'll answer some of the questions that you sent through. Next slide. So my journey started as an intern at the Aga Khan University Hospital in 2007. After that, I went to Kikuyu Hospital as a medical officer. The reason for that move was because I wanted to do obstetrics and gynecology, and I felt that I wanted that district level kind of work. So Kikuyu offered me that. Thereafter, I returned to the Aga Khan as an SHO, and this was a strategic move because I wanted to join the residency program in Aga Khan. And I thought, hey, if people know you and you're good, then and you are around, then they're more likely to consider you. However, it can also work against you. If people know you and you're bad, then they'll probably be saying, that one we cannot appoint. So I was lucky to get the 4-year residency at Aga Khan. That time we never used to pay, but I never say that we never used to pay because the amount of work we put into it is more than the amount of fees we would have paid. So I finished that and became an instructor in the department up to the end of 2013. And that's my journey in Kenya as a medical doctor. And then I came to the UK. I followed a little bit different pathway than Gathoni. Gathoni came and registered through the Blab pathway, all that. For me, if you come to the UK having done your specialist training or having done at least part 1 of the UK specialist exams in NSI, in a division, then you can get GMC registration through a different pathway. So for me, the University of Oxford, who offered me a clinical research fellowship, sponsored my GMC registration. So I never had to do PLABs. I did 3 years in Oxford, clinical work, research, did an MSc, and I did the UK registration, the UK specialist exam for the membership of the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Then I took up a job as a senior clinical fellow at Derby Hospital. So like Gathoni said, there are so many types of jobs you'll find in the UK. Some are on the training pathway towards consultant. Some are just service delivery. So the job I took up in Derby was service delivery. They are using your skills as an obstetrician to support their department. But even then, the hospitals have ways of supporting you follow a different path. You don't have to be in formal training to get to specialist recognition. So there's something called certificate for eligibility of specialist recognition if you have it elsewhere. That will not apply to you, but just in case some of you may stay on in Kenya and then have to come to the UK at a later stage. So I spent a year in there. Then I decided I've always wanted to be a clinical academic. So I sought for an opportunity to do clinical academic work, and I got that in Liverpool. And then I didn't get my research funded. I wanted to do a PhD. So those are some of the challenges. What you want may not always come to you. So I didn't get it funded, and I decided, hey, I'm losing so much on clinical. I went back to Blackpool Victoria Hospital as an associate specialist grade, and I spent a year there. Then suddenly the UK reopened opportunities for people like me who have trained elsewhere. This had been closed since 2006, and suddenly, because they've exited the EU, they've opened up and realized, oh, we have this pool of people around here who can be our own consultants, but we are not giving them an easy pathway. So they reopened and they told us, hey, you can join the pathway, but you have to join at ST3 level. The UK specialist training for obs and gyne is 7 years. So we all are told to join at ST3, and then they observe you over 1 year, and then they assess you and decide where they rank you. So I've just had my assessment and I've jumped to ST6. So that's the like the senior levels of in a normal training pathway. So they always try to accommodate people. I'll be moving on to doing research after that. So in terms of reflecting on my own journey, back in Kenya, you can stay on as a medical officer. There's nothing wrong with that. I have known people who decided that is enough. They can earn a living from being a medical officer. They can do other things, and that's okay. It's your choice. It's fine. Or progress within Kenya. I have colleagues who I left in Kenya or who are my seniors who explored the opportunities we have in Kenya, and there are many. So one is you could do your postgraduate training at one of the local universities. You can go through the college system. You know, there's COSEXA, there's COPEXA. Different colleges are coming up and they're training people, so you don't need to leave your workplace. And then you can progress elsewhere. You can go around Africa. I have people who went to do their specialist training in Makerere, in Tanzania, in South Africa. The only thing is that when you go there, you might not be able to work, but you'll have to pay fees. So who will support you? Then there are the rest of us who sought opportunities in the UK, USA, Australia, and many other countries. And people come with different objectives. Some want to train and go back to Kenya. Some want to train and then work here and then go back. Some want to train and work and settle. It's good to have clear objectives, but what I will tell you at this stage is that just come with the mindset that when you leave Kenya, this will be home, okay? Don't just come with the mindset saying, I'm just training and then going back, because that has a way of setting your mind. How do you do your things? Do you invest here? Do you set up base here? Otherwise, you'll waste 5 to 7 years in a training program. Then you realize you split all your money back to Kenya and you have nothing for yourself here. Then careers outside medicine, that link there, which will be shared in the slides, it's not just about medicine. Your medical degree can be useful in many other ways, and I included that as a career option. And then leaving your own country to come abroad, there are things to think about, social support. When we came in, it was just my wife and our daughter. Now we have 2 other children. All that comes into play, especially if your family. We never used to have a group like we have now of the UK medical doctors that we can, phone each other for advice. So it's you alone. So you need to go to a place where, if possible, there's some support. Visa status, your visa status determines what opportunities are available to you. There are some situations, things like GP, which is similar to family medicine in Kenya. You can actually sign up for it within a year of coming to the UK or almost immediately, because there's a huge shortage. But if you want things like surgery, obs and gynae, radiology, ophthalmology, you might have to wait for a while for your visa status to have no limitations. So I started off with a work visa, then moved to a permanent residency visa, and just recently got my citizenship. So once you get your permanent residency or you get your spousal visa, for example, if your spouse is an accountant and they give you their support visa, so you have no limitations, then you have equal access to everything. So pay attention to that. Then the registration process varies from one country to another. Go for the easy one that will give you your objectives. And of course, exams you have to do along the way. Some countries, like if you go to a place where language is a barrier, you'll have also to do language tests like Swedish if you go to Sweden. Then the other question about my own journey was, do I stick on my own vision of wanting to be a clinical academic in obs and gynae, or throughout these challenges I'm facing, do I just say, let me just retrain as a general practitioner? That's an option, and you can decide what you want to do. But I've chosen to stick on what I've invested in since 2009, which is obs and gynae. Then when you're here, right from the time you come, you are assured of a constant income. There's nothing like going to the streets asking for your salary. I see doctors going on strike. That is too much unnecessary negative energy we don't deserve. So you can have your constant income. Taxation is high, but you can plan around it. You can raise your family, you can invest, and you'll be fine. Stay on in Kenya. You continue fighting for your salary. People don't value your progression. For you to make an extra coin, like now, if I come back to Kenya and get a public sector, I'm not discouraging people, just telling you the reality. I get a public sector job. I have 3 kids to support, and well, my wife will earn her own living. She's not my dependent, it's my kids. I'll have to take them to a private school and all that. So I'll need to join the rat race of private practice, running from one hospital to another. I don't need to do that when I'm in the UK. My salary is enough, we can plan around it. Then you always have this guilt of, are you doing brain drain or skills repatriation? So how this, you have to think about it all the time. By giving this talk, Gadoni and myself are getting some form of satisfaction. We are giving back to Kenya, where we came from. You also have to reach at some point, you ask yourself, is it about saving my country? Or do you want to save yourself first and then your dependents, your kids, and then you can contribute to the system later? So all those are things that you have to keep thinking every time, and they will happen to you as well. Next slide. So in terms of choosing your internship center, you have to decide whether you want to go through the college system in Kenya, like COSEXA for the surgeons. There are other colleges coming up. And therefore, going to a place that has a college center already to do your internship. For example, Nakuru has a COSEXA center, Nyeri, Mombasa. You might think then that will create a good grounding for you. If you want to train using the MED system, then there's Moi, Aga Khan, Nairobi, and KU is also developing its own programs. So you might want to affiliate yourself to a place where continuation will be easier. The people who recruit into postgraduate training are the people who will supervise you during internship. So if they know you and they see potential in you, they will support you. Then you may want other things like radiology, pathology, emergency medicine, other than the traditional clinical disciplines. Then you search your internship center based on that. You can always ask the internship director in the center you are. You say, hey, I want to do radiology at the end of it. Can you fashion my rotations so that it can accommodate some rotation in the lab or in the radiology department or in A&E? And that will enrich yourself. There's always flexibility, and if you don't ask, then you'll stick to traditional. Then, of course, you're still young, but some of you, have families, and some of you are considering starting families. So you have to think about your career choices along all this mix. Next. In terms of international destinations, when is it best? I would say complete your internship, get your Kenyan registration. And there's a reason why I say that. Sometimes you come out here and things don't work and you have to come back home. If you didn't do your internship or you didn't get your registration, then where are you going to start? So sort out your stuff at home. And then Gathoni's talked about registration. If you've done internship elsewhere, it will be easier for you to blend into the system like Australia or the UK. Then language. If you want to go to a place like Germany, France, China, Sweden, Poland, or any other place, at the end, to train, then you have to start investing. Join Alliance Française, join, what was it called? Goethe Institute, and get your German up to date. I have friends from Kenya who are top consultants in Germany. So if that is your pathway, think about the language so that when you come to register, it will not be an issue. Then exams, Gathoni has spoken about the GMC process. In Australia, you need to look at the Australian Medical Council website, and there's an MCQ exam you need to do. That is like a sum of what you do in 5th year. In the US, there's a USMLE process. Best to start that in the later years of medical school. And then money. Money is always an issue. It's not a cheap affair to move abroad. If you don't, once you get your internship money, please save it up. You have to prioritize. Do you go buy this car on loan or other things we did? I'm sure you guys will be wiser. And then avoid loans. When you move abroad and you have a loan going at home, your mind can settle. And also that involves, we are from an African culture. Some of us are firstborns and you have relatives. So make sure you sort them out and you tell them, hey, I'm going on a mission. And you guys have to think about supporting yourselves as well, because I don't know how it will be ahead. You cannot just afford to distribute your resources thinly. So those are practical issues, I'm telling you. Then look at your objective. What do you want to do? Train only, train and work, train and settle. My advice, think that you're coming to settle, because some people come and a few years down the line, they realize, oh, life has moved on. And if they are to come back, they have to plan for more people than they came with. Next. When you're making your general life decisions, I am 38 now. If I was to go back to when I was 24, 25, I made my choices based on passion, mainly. I was passionate about Ops and Gyne. And then later on, you realize, hey, there's more to passion, quality of life. And medicine is not everything. You have family to support, you need time for them, your spouse, you don't want to have a divorce later. So think about your choices around that, and different medical specialties will give you different combinations of quality of life. And then return on investment. Why are we doing this? You have to cost every decision. Every step you make, you must do some mathematics about it, some accounting. So think about that as well as make your choices. Then convenience. Sometimes you may have passion, you may be thinking about return on investment, but what is available to you is just what you have to accept. When you come abroad, what you came thinking you're coming to do, it might not be the case. you might have to readjust many times over and maybe accept or find yourself in things you didn't know. I know surgeons who came from other countries and they retrained as general practitioners because life has to go on. Move on. In terms of resources, the Kenyan, everything is online nowadays. I think that's how I can sum it. So Kenya, we have the colleges there. Some of them don't have websites, unfortunately. Then the universities look at what each programs require. South Africa, there is the College of CMSA, Medical Colleges of South Africa. Anyway, it's CMSA. Have a look at it. It details the specialist training in South Africa. Good place to train, but you have to pay. And a few people I spoke with, you're treated as a supernumerary registrar. So they have to take care of their own first before they take care of you. And you cannot settle in South Africa at this point because you come from an African country. They have some restrictions just to make sure other countries don't have brain drain. The UK, GMC website there. We have the LinkedIn page of the Kenyan doctors in the UK. You can inbox us some questions if you have. We are always happy to support you guys with any guidance that we can. There's a blog site called Survey IMG that's over there. It has a lot of practical issues as well coming to the UK as an international medical graduate. The Australian AMC website is there. Of course, the US, ECFMG. And then we have a similar organization like we have here in the UK called Kenyan Doctors in the USA. And they are very keen to support people as well who want to follow that pathway. This list is not exhaustive. I love Survey. Go on, next slide. I love the Survey IMG web blog site. Please have a look at it. Next. Now, these are your questions. I don't know, Evelyn, whether you want us to just go through these questions and then we open up the floor at the end.
I think you can go through them because they're not many.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So somebody asked a question, benefits of pursuing postgraduate training abroad versus locally. I'll tell you, having done postgraduate training in Kenya and having done it here, you get exposure, you get international recognition, you get international professional citizenship. But what do I mean? The qualification you get in the UK or the USA or Australia, you can get a job anywhere in the world. Your qualification you get in Kenya, the basic one, yes, but the specialist one, you'll struggle to get a job everywhere in the world. You just need to go to the Middle East and present your credentials and you see if you have this, they have tiers of qualifications. So the UK, Canada, USA, you're both going for a consultant job, but they get better rates, better terms. Then as a Kenyan trained consultant, they may not even look at your papers. They have a rank. It's a form of discrimination, but hey, that's how the world works. I said, as a Kenyan specialist, I came to work in South Africa. With British specialist recognitions and my citizenship, I can get a job in South Africa if I want. So international networks, all that. Then benefits of practicing abroad, even for a short time. You can come here for a fellowship and then come back home. A lot of our colleagues have done that. Recently, I watched a doctor called Nyaonga, who is a neurosurgeon in Nyeri, who was featured in KTN, and he was here with us in the UK. He's come back and he set up a service. All that he learned here, plus what he learned at home, has made him a better doctor and a better human being. Is specialist training abroad demanding more than local? The answer is yes. Back at home, and I'm sorry to be very critical, a lot of times you'll find that you're being used for service delivery. Most of the times the supervisors are nowhere to be seen. I'm told it's changing. You call in a consultant to support you because you found an interesting case or a difficult case, and they say you're not confident enough, you're not fit to be the specialist you want. There's nothing like that here. If I want a consultant, I'll call them in and either to supervise me because I need to be supervised or to be assessed, or because I feel that the labor ward is too busy and I want an extra hand, I'll call in the consultant and they do not ask questions. So the training might be longer because they have incorporated a lot of things, but it's worth it. It's usually a college system, not university-based. By this, I mean it's the royal colleges that support the training. not the university. University will support you for a master's in science, a master's in arts, or a PhD. And then we have a lot of workplace-based assessments, which is missing in our training in Kenya. So like OSAT, objective structured assessment, assessments, like if you're doing a procedure, like let's say an appendix, the common thing in Kenya is see one, do one, and then you are on your own. But here you'll have to go through different steps to make sure that you achieve that competency. It's competency-based, not just the amount of time you spend. Then even small things like when you're an intern, observing you doing a speculum examination, mini clinical exercise, observing you counseling a patient, observing you taking consent from a patient. You get the seniors there observing you and they give you feedback and they build you. So this is the benefit of such a system here. Then there's NOTS, that's non-objective technical skills observation. So there's more that makes us a doctor, not just the competencies or skills, the human aspect of us, how we function within teams, how well we are leaders. So all those get assessed. Then there's an emphasis on reflection, reflective learning. If you have seen a patient or have had a good outcome or a bad outcome, you have to keep a log of that and demonstrate that you're learning, and that is assessed. It's all round and assessment is broad. So training abroad, if you ask me, is totally worth it until our systems revise our curricula and improve. Next slide. Next slide. Somebody asked about platforms to apply while studying abroad. I just thought I don't want to mix two things. If you want to do a Master of Science or an MA or a PhD, you apply to the universities. If you want to come and work and train as a doctor, it's GMC for the UK, and then the National Health Service website, and the jobs are there. Yes. And then somebody asked about Rhodes scholarships and Commonwealth scholarships. Maybe people want to do MPH, MSc, and all that, it's fine. And your chances as a Kenyan graduate are as good as any applicant. I have a group that I joined in Oxford that has Rhodes scholars, and there are plenty of them. You just need to link up with them for support as you prepare your applications. Next. Training under a leader in a certain field. For example, you decide that you want to train under who? And a cardiologist who is doing some interventional procedure not done anywhere else. This is always best at fellowship level, not at your specialist training level. So you train and then you establish contact with a particular leader. You read on their work, because there's no need of, for example, if I'm a leader in a field, there's no need of contacting me, and when you don't even know my last paper that I published and what it was about, I'll say you're not interested. So you read around their work, read around their institution, establish contact, show them that training you is worth it, that you're going to pass on the skills back to where you came from. Show them that you can establish collaborations when you go back where you came from. Most of them are eager to reach out. So yes, go for it. Then in terms of full versus partial scholarships, again, there was a lot of interest on master's and PhD programs. That one, you need to look at the particular university. Be aware, unlike back home, most of these master's programs are not clinical, unless it's something like Master of Science in Clinical Dermatology, which you can do here and come back home and practice as a dermatologist. There are people who have bypassed the MMed in that, so they just do the clinical dermatology. Airlift programs, those ones used to exist in the 1960s. Somebody asked about that. I'm not aware of any, unless I become very rich and I can airlift you guys. Then you have to check expenses that you may have to foot by yourself, even if the university has given you a scholarship. There are still things you may need to meet by yourself, and universities guide you on that. Doing an elective abroad or observership, yes, any experience is useful. If, for example, you think you want to do your residency in the US, you can ask your medical school, can I do part of my elective term in the US or the UK? Yeah, and that gives you an insight. However, because it's usually a short period, it may not give you the real feel of things. Next. Hospitals in Kenya that sponsor training abroad or locally. Yes, some hospitals like Mission Hospitals will sponsor your MMed and then they require you to go back to them and serve them for the duration you agree. And then some hospitals like Kenyatta or KU or Moirifaro may decide we want to start a certain program, but we don't have the specialists. Can we sponsor somebody to go abroad and train and then come back? So like radiation oncology or interventional radiology, yeah, and they will usually sponsor from the pool of doctors they have in their hospital. Then I think I mentioned about leaving before or after internship. And my recommendation is that people finish their internship and get registered before you venture out. It's totally worth it. You never know when you need to return to base. Next. Exams, Gathoni has gone through that in detail. You just have to look at the other websites for the other relevant exams. Recognition of registration amongst Commonwealth countries. Unfortunately, the only thing they recognize is your basic medical degree, but your medical board registration, you have to get registered in every country you work. Yep, and every country has its own registration requirements. Then age limit to postgraduate entry. Somebody mentioned that apparently some programs in Kenya, the older you get, you are not eligible. And the US, it becomes difficult to get matching. I must state here that ageism is a form of discrimination, and nobody should discriminate another on the basis of age. If I'm 60 and I want to come and retrain in a master's program in Kenya, I should be allowed to do so long as I'm competent and able. So we have to keep challenging our systems so that they can change, because discrimination on the basis of age is not allowed. However, just be aware that the older one gets, the more rusty they become, and they become less trainable. And perhaps programs can argue using that point and say, we don't want this MO who has spent 20 years out there coming now to train, because they are not as moldable as the younger ones. So, but we need to do away with any form of discrimination and treat everybody just on the basis of their professional qualification. Next. My challenges abroad versus what I can advise you. I will say, even if I share my story, everybody has their own journey and challenges and opportunities. So to each their own. The other one is, do all specialist programs need addresses? The Kenya programs were designed as a blend. Ideally, you should have two pathways. People who are interested in just following a clinical pathway, in which case they don't need addresses. They probably need to do things like audits, or people who want to become academics, and therefore they need to do addresses or an academic pathway. But in Kenya, it will remain blended until that is revised, or you join the college system. Out here, that is not a requirement, but read on the specific websites. Competitiveness of all programs equal? No. Every country you go, they will prioritize their own graduates, apart from Kenya that I've seen prioritizing, where are these doctors from? Cuba. So most other sober countries will prioritize taking care of their own graduates before they offer opportunities to international graduates. Unless, of course, you join a system like the USMLE, that they treat everybody equal. Or I understand Gathoni has said the UK is changing its system to make sure that even their own graduates do the same exam. So equality is important, but we need to take care of our own. I cannot go to feed the neighbor's children before I fed my own. Next. Working for the UN or humanitarian medicine, I have no experience with that, but I have colleagues who describe it as wonderful, and you get exposed to a different kind of medicine and challenges. They do give adaptation training. Some people find it very good that they do it for a lifetime, but when they get families, it becomes challenging because you have to move from one station to another. Doctors, communities abroad to help with culture shock and racism. Yes, culture shock will be there. There's a nice curve showing the process of culture shock online. Even me and Gathoni, if we come back to Kenya, we'll get reverse culture shock. So we have communities here, and if you reach out to us, we are happy to support you. I'm not promising anything, but some people are also happy to offer mentorship. Some people have extra space in their houses when you're coming to do your exams, and we can always ask people, anybody who has space and they're happy to sponsor a Kenyan student coming to do an exam, to stay for a few days. I'm not promising anything, but I'm sure if we reached out to people, they're always happy to support you. Next slide. Job guarantees. I'll say here, just like Kenya, there are no guarantees anywhere. Nobody owes you a career. You must work over and beyond, especially when you are an international medical graduate. We have to overcome a lot of things. People may say that, oh, equality and everything. People will always approach you skeptically before they know what you can deliver. Like, for example, I'm in a ward round. I'm in the company of my white colleagues, and I let the junior trainee or the intern lead the round and question the patient. And the patient thinks the junior trainee, because they are white, they are the consultant, until the intern says, let me ask my senior, and they face me, and then they get surprised. Oh, this guy is the senior. So those are the prejudices that we might not be able to do anything about. So when you're out here, don't slacken. You have to work very hard. I was having a chat with one of my consultants, Professor Atiomo. He's from Nigeria, who told me that he came here 30 years ago. And even after training here, doing even a PhD, he had to apply to 40 jobs, consultant jobs, before he got his job. Obviously, if you look at our paperwork, some of us have done much more than even local trainees, but there are always the hurdles we have to jump. I must tell you that candidly, that you must work hard over and beyond. Advertisements on the media. You'll have some guys advertising in the Kenyan media when they know that some doctors are jobless. There are people pursuing alternative careers, and being a conman or a con woman might be an alternative career. So if you see these things, always cross-check with the country or the medical board or the institution that is purportedly recruiting. Next. Medical insurance versus payment of healthcare abroad. It varies from one country to another. In the UK, money does not exchange hands at the point of service. So I'm able to offer my patient what they really deserve, that is supported by evidence, without thinking whether they can afford it. And getting that headache away from your decision-making is very important. You can offer the patient what they deserve. And for this reason alone, UK is a great place to train as a specialist. Unlike the US, where there's a lot of influence of medical insurance, or even Kenya deciding which investigation they pay for or not, we don't have that over here. So the UK, for this reason, is a great place to train. Next. And that was a summary of the questions you asked. We will now address specific questions. I think you've sent some through Q&A, but as I continue, maybe we can give a chance to Dr. Tayari to say hello. Omar Tayari, if you can come on mic and video. And then Dr. Cheserem, if they are around. Evelyn, you can stop sharing my slides so that you can hear Dr. Tayari.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is Omar. I am a sports and exercise medicine doctor in the UK. More specifically, I work in the armed forces. So one of the reasons why I sort of joined this forum is to provide that sort of depth in terms of medicine in the UK, alternative pathways. Away from the NHS. I know Gadoni, good friend, is talking about sort of everyone working in the NHS, but I don't. I work in armed forces. Now that's a pathway which is not. It's very peculiar to me, in the sense that I've been able to position myself at every step of my journey in the UK in a state where I can be available for some of these jobs. So at the moment, sports and exercise medicine in the armed forces. And before doing this, I used to work for the Department of Work and Pension. So this is another specialty which is completely different. So disability medicine, which I did for about 3 years. And essentially, the job was looking at patients or people who have different disabilities, and then advising the government in regard to their disability, so that they can get the state sort of benefit welfare. So my message to you really is, like, Francis obviously and Kadoni have said, is have a mental picture of where you want to be. For me, my pathway is completely different, very, very, very different. So I cannot even share that with you, because none of you we will have to go through what I went through. But knowing what I know now, if I was at your position, I would probably, number one, work harder in medical school and get to learn so many things. And secondly, before coming to the UK, do your internship, as Francis has said. But for me, one of the things that I would have done before coming to the UK is to do an MEd. Okay, it puts you in a very, very, very good position, knowledge-wise. And secondly, having to jump over some of the hoops that you have to jump through if you do not have an MEd. So do an MEd would be my advice to most of you, and make sure you're very, very knowledgeable about so many different things in medicine. Apart from that, the UK is a nice place to be in terms of a good life, and we're more than happy to share with you experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, for sharing. Dr. Cheserom, are you able to hear us? Are you able to switch on your video and microphone?
I can see you now.
Okay, yeah, so you can see us. If you can introduce yourself and say hello to the medical students, and we can see you as well. So you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm joining a bit late. Mine is just to say that I'm sure Dr. Gidaye and Dr. Gadoni and Dr. Omar Tayari have given you good advice. My pathway was different because I studied in the UK. And I think catching the end of what Dr. Omar Tayari has said, definitely, I think those who come with a bit of experience, maybe they're a bit more mature and they can take better advantage of the system rather than the system here taking advantage of you for a few years before you pursue your career. And the only other thing I'll say is Dr. Gidaye's presentation was right. It's a journey. So some people you have to think about, am I coming just to train and come back to Kenya, or coming to the UK or the US or another country to train and then settle? And I have quite a few colleagues who've returned back to Kenya and they're doing very well. And so it is a journey, and we welcome all of you if you'd like to come to the UK, and we hope we can support you. And yes, some of you will remain in the UK, some might go back to Kenya, but I think I try not to say there's scarcity mentality. There's enough for everyone. And so don't worry too much about brain drain, because there are doctors who are going back from the UK, from the US to Kenya. And I think that in future, one of the things I'd like to see is where doctors in the diaspora can still contribute to the healthcare systems in their countries of origin. So that's something that will happen in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheserem. I just want to say something. I've seen, I've scared people about discrimination. One thing I'll tell you about the comparison between the UK and the US. Most of us have been here and nobody has stood on the streets to insult us, or like the one of George Floyd. No. What is remaining in the UK is what is called institutional racism. So it's not on the street or frank racism where people call you names or put barriers. No. It is, for example, people having subconscious biases. For example, even you guys have your own biases. Let me give you a nice example. If you walk out of where you are right now and you meet somebody in tatters who is looking unkempt, you would probably think this is a madman. That is a form of bias. We've been conditioned to think that people who are in tatters are mad. Or, for example, what's the other bias I can have? So the people here are not necessarily racist themselves, but they still have that thing behind them that people trust familiarity. So they trust those that they are familiar with, people of their own skin, you understand? that when you get into a theater to operate, for example, with the theater team asking you, and who is the surgeon? So to them, they don't think that this African man or African lady can be the surgeon. So one of my colleagues called Raj Dodia, he's come back to MPSHA now, he's the head of Obs and Gynae MPSHA, told me how to overcome that. Francis, when you go in the morning and you're the one doing the list, what you do is you become assertive. So I go in, people are assembled, I say aloud, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can we assemble for the pre-operative meeting? With a very authoritative voice. So people know that this is a surgeon right from the word go. You wear that face. Unfortunately, we have to do that because there are those people who will not see us in any other way. Okay, so don't be scared. The UK, I think, is a far much better place than what we see on CNN for the US. I have also spent 2 months in Australia, in Melbourne as an observer, and it was a very wonderful experience. My sister works in Australia, and so far I was having a chat with her the other day. She's in social work, and she says that she's not experienced any discrimination. She's been there for 3 years now. So don't get scared about it. Yeah?
To add on what Francis is saying, I live in the middle of nowhere. I think, my family were the only Black people. We live on a very small island in North Wales, in a sort of retirement community, and I can say that everyone has been very kind. I think the one thing I've learned is you have to be yourself. You have to work harder than everybody else, because your work and your talent and your that's what should lead, because you have to prove yourself. So my mother always told me that huku si nyumbani. So don't expect that you'll be treated the way you're treated at home. You sort of have to, unfortunately, earn people's respect, because it's there. You can't escape it. I also lived in China, and even there, it was the exact same thing. I think even there, it's a bit worse because it's in your face. Whereas here, it's very subtle, So sometimes you may not even know you're being discriminated against, So it's something, if you're going to leave home, it's something that you have to learn to live with. And I always remember, it's not personal. It is not me, Gavoni. It is not personal. So you don't let those things get you down. That is what it is living abroad. Yeah.
And
I think sorry, Francis. Just to add on to that to that topic, essentially what you will find is you will be in so many situations where you will find it uncomfortable to be in there. Okay, so it's how you decide to deal with that situation. So as an example, for example, when I was doing my master's degree in sports and exercise medicine, I had a project. So my project to do my dissertation had to involve me having access to a lab. So one time I went into the lab with my subjects, I've started, and then the administrator came in and said, well, you're not supposed to be here. So, get out with your subjects. So for me, in that situation, I said, okay, fine. So there's two things. There's number one, I need to do my project. And number two, what do I do in this situation? So the choices you make in those situations are going to be very individualized, but you have to remember what you're looking for. If what you're looking for is something that you can let go of, then fight for yourself. Stand there and exchange words and tell them to walk out instead. Or alternatively, you can try to be diplomatic, which is something that you will always find yourself having to do. Having to smile a lot, having to be extra friendly. You're walking into situations like Gidai has said, where you're the senior, but you're having to prove that. Your junior doctor is being given more respect than you as the senior there. So there's two ways. You can fight that prejudice, but then again, you will find life to be very, very difficult. The alternative is play along, know that You are who you are. You can't change that. And in most situations, you will find yourself to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, in Kenya, we have worse things, tribalism.
Yeah.
Tribalism is worse in, if I compare my experience here versus the kind of tribalism we have back home, then I think you're better off here. So weigh everything. Do you have any other Kenyan doctor from the UK on the group? Joanne, are you around? Any other doctor? If there's any other doctor, they can let us know. What we'll do is I'll hand over back to Evelyn, and she can coordinate the question and answer. Evelyn, you can read the questions that are there and decide who answers amongst the group that is here from the UK.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. There was someone to do the question and answer session for us, so I'll call on to Wanju Mwangi. Then she's going to coordinate that.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Wanju. So thank you, Francis, for the session. Actually, you've gone through majority of the questions that had been posted earlier. So I'll look into the Q&A section and see. So here's a question for Dr. Gadhoni. Do you need to complete both Blab 1 and 2 to apply for postgraduate studies in the UK? I think I talked about that earlier.
So as Dr. Francis said that the UK Masters is an academic qualification. So you do not need to have done Blab. So for example, I did sports and exercise medicine, and I had my license and a friend of mine didn't have his license. He was from Nigeria and we were both able to complete the course. So you do not have to have a Blab to complete a master's, an MSc and MA. You do not need a Blab registration. But if you want to do training or a residency, that type of postgraduate qualification, then you do need to have registration, and you do need to go through the process because it is two separate things. Yeah, basically, does that answer the question?
Yes, you have. Thank you very much.
Okay, can I just add something there, Wanjiru? Sorry.
Yes, please.
One of the misconceptions that even for me experienced at the beginning was the idea of training. Okay, so when you come to the UK, so what is training in the UK? So there is studying and there's training. Okay, so studying is what, for example, myself and Gadhoni have done in terms of you coming to do a postgraduate study degree. So it could be an MSc, it could be an MA, or whatever it is. But this is where you go to a university as a student. Okay, now that is completely different from postgraduate training to specialize to be something in the medical field. That is completely different because that is given within the NHS system. So you have to be registered and you have to be employed by the NHS for you to be trained to become a specialist in something. So I think that's a very important distinction, and especially for students, because what you're familiar with is MEd, but in the UK there's no MEd. You come in and you have a job and there's on-job training, and then you become a specialist or consultant or whatever path you choose to take. So that's very important. Thank you.
And to add on to that, you can come to do your master's. So you can come in and do a master's, and you can also, as you're doing your master's, you can work on getting a registration. So that is something I know a lot of my Nigerian colleagues have done. You come in to do a master's, and while you're here, you work on doing your registration. So by the time you finish, you both have your master's and you have registration. So it's not something that you can do. You can do it together if that's something that you want to do. And also something to remember about the master's programs is the cost. So here they charge international fees and local fees. So that is also something that you need to take into consideration. The local fees, the international fees are double of the local fees. So doing a master's here is quite expensive. It's not cheap. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gadoni and Dr. Omar. Someone is also asking, based on the same, can Dr. Omar kindly pardon about the difference between master's, residency, and postgraduate?
Yeah, thank you. So the main things is there's two aspects to postgraduate. How do I put it? Postgraduate acquisition of knowledge. Let me just put it that way. Okay, so there's two parts. So the first one is almost like a continuation of your undergrad. So this is the academic pathway. So you've done your undergrad degree, so you want to do a master's degree. Okay, so in anything, but most of the time it's going to be an MSc. Okay, but that doesn't confer you specialist recognition for any of the medical specialties. Okay, so you will have a degree that you can show, but it doesn't give you any advantage in anything. Okay, now the other side is the medical training. So residency, medical training, that means the same thing. In this pathway, it means you come to the UK, get your registration, that is through getting your doing your Blab 1 and 2. Once you get your license, you apply for a job. You get the job. Once you get the job, then you apply for a training position in that job if it offers it. Okay, so you can have a job for years and years and years, but it does not count as you being trained towards something. Okay, so you have to understand that you, in the second pathway, the clinical pathway, you get a job and then look for a training position for that job, depending on the discipline that you choose to follow. Okay, and these two are completely separate. You have to be very, very careful, because don't board the plane thinking that you're coming to be trained as a specialist, yet you're coming to do an MSc. Don't make that mistake. You'll be very, very disappointed.
And just to follow on Dr. Omari, with the training, once you get your GMC, what they've done is they've streamlined the application for training as well, which is the process that I'm going through. So for certain specialities like general practice, which is like family medicine, psychiatry, radiology, the beginning of obstetrics and gynecology, not where Francis is, but the beginning, if you're starting afresh, and neurosurgery, neurology, you have to do what is called a MSRA, which is a multi-specialty recruitment exam. So it's like Blab again. You have to show that you're fit to start training. So you have to have completed the equivalent of their internship here. So there's a form that you complete. So it would be good you work for a little bit and get all your competency signs. Once you fill this form, then you sit the exam, and then to get into the training program, it's a score, and there's a clinical station, so an interview. And then, if it's a national recruitment. So if there are 70 people who applied for 20 jobs, it's the ones who scored the highest. So that's how getting into training works. But it's very streamlined, it's very straightforward, and it's once you get into the system, then you're able to decide what it is that you want to do. So don't be discouraged. There's plenty to go, and if that's what you want to do, the goodness of being in the UK is that everything is very streamlined and information is very readily available, and you can look it up online. So if anyone's thinking about that.
The most encouraging thing about undergraduate training in Kenya is that it's very, very robust. You come in and you're really up, amongst some of the registrars just with your undergraduate training knowledge and internship in Kenya. So like I said before, knowing what I know now, if I was in your position today, I would probably work a bit harder in med school to gain more knowledge. And that is so that when you come here, your knowledge speaks for itself. So people give you opportunities. I'll give you just a very small example with myself, because I'd spent a lot of time in surgery in Kenya before I came here. And when I came here, I got a surgical job. So I went in, and the way I was holding instruments, because I told everyone this is my first job, I've never worked as a doctor, but the way I was holding instruments, the surgeon said, "Stop lying, you're lying to us. You've done this before." And, and they can tell, they ask you a question and the way you respond, they can tell. And quickly it turns from, you're going to be observing to, you're going to assist. And then suddenly it's going to be, well, you're going to start this operation and then the surgeon will finish, okay? So trust the knowledge that you're acquiring in Kenya at the moment, because it's really, really high up there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omar and Dr. Gathoni. So guys, you've had, let your knowledge speak for itself. Asante sana. So,
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I have answered some of the questions on the Q&A. If you look on the right side, there's some answering. So if I'm just selecting some of the questions so that yeah, in the interest of time, carry on, yeah.
Okay. So I can see, yeah, Dr. Francis has answered about the discrimination. Someone wanted to know about, would like to know about practicing in Canada. The person joined late, so maybe Dr. Francis, you can address this.
Okay, Canada is a very tricky situation that even people who get permanent residency card find it very difficult to get into the system. So unless you have Canadian citizenship and you are a Canadian medical graduate, it's very difficult. I have a medical school classmate called Lalji, who managed to train as a GP by going to work in the very remote parts of Canada. So he had to sacrifice for him to get what he wanted. And then I have a colleague who hasn't been able to get medical registration. His family is in Canada, but he took the UN job and he is up and about so that he can sustain his family until they get the citizenship. So if you go to a place like Canada, if you want to remain in the specialist training, it's tough. But if you want to do things like an MSc, PhD, then you can, but then you have to think about the international fees and also think about how you're going to sustain yourself when you're there. So Canada is a tricky situation. That said, after MMed, there are a few people in Aga Khan and a few places who went and did fellowships in cardiology, in nephrology. And when you go to do a fellowship, they actually give you a salary. So then it's easier then. So you might want to think, do I do my MMed in Kenya? And then seek out these opportunities. That's it. That's all I can say about Canada.
Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. So I'll go to the next question. How easy is it to set up your own private practice in UK or any other country after registration? Dr. Francis, I will address this to you once again.
Okay, thank you. Private practice in the UK. If you train as a GP, which is similar to a family doctor, majority of them are able to register their practices as private practice or businesses, and then which is getting business from the NHS, a very different model. But that said, the government is encouraging different practices to come together. For example, if you go around Nairobi and you tell people these small clinics you are running are not viable, you need to unite 15 clinics into one and form a big hub. So that's okay. Now, what about the other specialist disciplines? I have to train and get registered as a consultant, and then I have a job in an NHS hospital. And then I get something called sessions for SPA, professional advancement. And it is those sessions, I think there are 2 per week, a consultant is given. When you're not giving service to the NHS, you can then sign up to the private hospital. to be able to do your private work. That is, you still have to meet your hours as a consultant in the NHS before you can venture into any private work. How do you get into the private hospital? Your colleagues recommend you. So if I am a dodgy consultant, or one who has poor outcomes, my colleagues may not want me to join them. Also, to say the truth, there are also zones. So you may find a bowel surgeon not wanting another bowel surgeon to come into the same practice because competition is coming in. These things are everywhere, not just Kenya. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. So I'll go to the next question. How has Brexit changed or affected the job market in the UK, especially in the medical field? Dr. Gathoni, I would like you to address that question together with what are the pass rates for the Blab?
Okay, so what I think Brexit has helped us as foreign medical graduates, because before with the visas, they had what was called a resident market labor test, which was they had to offer the job to a British or a EU person first before they could offer the job to us. But because of Brexit, that has gone. So now all the medical jobs are on the shortage occupation list. So this in turn has reduced the cost of the visa. It's now even half price. As of this year, last year or this year, the price went down. So now we are all together, us, EU, and the British as well. On paper, we are all treated on the same level. So this is for all medical jobs and nurses as well. So we are all, there's no, they have to offer it to their person first. So now we are all together in this market. And the same applies for training, because they got rid of that market labor test. So some specialties might get easier to get into, because now you don't have to wait to get residency because the jobs are on the shortage list. But those specialties are really competitive. And if they're only offering 4 posts a year and you're 500, 600 people who've applied, and there's still ubaguzi that happens there. They still do promote their people first, which is understandable, but there's a lot of work. So that shouldn't discourage you about visas. And there's a lot of work, and I think they acknowledge that there is a shortage, and they're constantly trying to accommodate and help us. So I think Brexit helped us. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. Someone was also asking, what are the pass rates for Blab?
Okay, so Blab, so I saw someone right there that they're a B student, and would they be able to manage? So just from my example, I had lived my life, then I decided to go to medical school. So I did my A-levels, and I did like business and religious. I didn't do any sciences. So when I decided to go back to medical school as an adult with all my 26 years old, I made it through med school, and I made it through Blab. Maybe a little bit more challenging, but if one thing to understand about Blab is it's not about your knowledge. It's about answering the question the way they want you to answer the question, So it's important to practice the questions and learn the structure of the exam, because you can find people who are geniuses, but they really struggle, but us average Cs, you pass. So it's just about doing the question banks, practicing the questions, and getting to know the format of the exam. And once you know that, the knowledge you have, if you've completed your medical school and done your internship, Blab is not difficult. The first step, most people do well with the first step. The problem comes with the second step, because I think this exam, it's not really about your clinical skills. It is more of a communication exam. And I think a lot of foreign medical graduates struggle with this, because here in the UK, we are also what's the word? We're also like, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, it's a service provision, you know, it's like customer service. Your communication, it's more important to communicate really well and be safe than to be a genius and, you know, you can't communicate. So from my own personal experience, I think step 2 is a little bit more difficult because you have to realize what they're testing is your ability to show empathy, your ability to communicate. It's not really about the clinical stuff because they've already tested that of you in the first step. So step 2 is a little bit tricky and a lot of people struggle with it because you go in thinking that it's, you know, I just need to learn, is this question about a surgical question? No, it is much more than that. And it's more about communication, showing empathy, listening. So these are the kind of things that they're testing out. And that's why I think it is important to go and do these courses because it helps you reframe your mindset. It's expensive, but it's worth it. And I think all of us, everyone who comes in to do through Blab, we all go do the courses because it does really help you reframe your mind and teaches you how to do the exam. Because I think if you've graduated medical school, you have all the clinical knowledge that you need. It's just learning how to do the exam. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Gathoni. So I will go to the next question. Are residency acceptance rates for IMGs more lenient towards some specialties than others? For example, the person who's asking this question is interested in psychiatry, and so he's asking what are his prospects. Dr. Emily, please, can you answer for us this question?
Unfortunately, no, I can't answer that question. I think
Gathoni.
Yeah, I'll help.
Gathoni.
I'm working in psychiatry right now and landed here by total accident. Psychiatry was never on my radar. Got here by total accident and I'm really enjoying it. So as I mentioned before, there are specialties like GP, so general practice, psychiatry, which is another, but those two, according to the need, they are very, not many people want to do them. So they're, I'll just say easier to get into, but it's not really easy, but you're more likely to get in and it's very IMG friendly specialties. There are very many IMGs have ended up doing it. So if you want psychiatry, I encourage you, go for it. It's getting more competitive now, but there are jobs. As I said, you have to come in, you have to prove that you've done the equivalent of an internship. Psychiatry training here is 6 to 7 years. So you do 3 years as what they call a core trainee. So you rotate through all the psychiatry rotation. So they have adult psychiatry, general adult, old age psychiatry, forensics, which is prisons and criminal stuff. You have, what is the other one? Learning disabilities and child and adolescent psychiatry. So in the first 3 years, you have to rotate through all those departments. And then you have to complete your membership exams. So you have to do the exams to join the membership of the Royal College of Psychiatry. Once you complete this and complete those 3 years, then you go into higher training, similar to what Francis is in now, which is starting from ST3 going up. And that's when you choose what you want. Do you want to do general adult? Do you want to do forensics? Do you want to do old age? Do you want to do child and adolescent? Then you do 3 or 4 years, depending on which one you pick. And the good thing with psychiatry is once you complete your exams in the third year, you have no more exams to do. All you have to do is work and complete. And there are massive shortage for high level, like registrar psychiatrists and consultant psychiatrists. There's such a massive shortage. Like where I work, what we are finding is that there are no psychiatrists, there are not enough senior level psychiatrists, so they cannot even have trainees. We are a massive trust, and last year there was one trainee in our trust. We are 10 doctors, but because they don't have enough senior level consultants to train, they could only have one trainee last year. This year they've improved a bit, they have 2. So those are some of the difficulties that are happening, but hopefully people will finish and become consultants and choose to stay in psychiatry. And then, so there's a lot of scope for something like psychiatry, definitely. I would encourage you to. It's a really cool specialty here.
And allow me to add that all consultants are equal. Like in Kenya, where people think, oh, I'll become a surgeon or an obstetrician because I'll do more surgical cases and become richer quicker. When you are in the UK or other parts of the world, the consultants get remunerated the same. So whether you are a psychiatrist, whether you are a pediatrician, a surgeon, you are all equal and we are paid and remunerated the same. Yeah. Carry on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gathoni and Dr. Francis. The next question is, what is the roadmap for one who intends to be a clinical academic? Maybe Dr. Emily, you can address this one.
I should have told you what I am. I'm not a clinical academic. I think Dr. Githai might, sorry, I won't answer if I'll just be making it up for the sports.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Emily. Emily is a consultant in HIV and sexual health, as she'll tell you. So for me, I am the clinical academic pathway. The best time to join the clinical academic pathway is like when you come in as a post-internship, because you are starting your training at the beginning. So you can apply for, instead of a normal just clinical training, you apply for clinical research, what is the name? Academic clinical fellow, which combines your clinical training with the academic training. That is, you spend 75% of your time doing clinical training and 25% doing academic training. At the end of your third year, you are expected to be able to apply for a grant to support your getting a higher degree, like a PhD. Those who are not successful, they then convert to full-time clinical training. Those who are successful will then be given 3 years out of program. So they go out of their clinical training to concentrate on the academics. And then when they finish the PhD, they rejoin the program, but they get a new title as clinical lecturer. So they are clinical lecturers on the basis that they have finished their PhD, but their specialist training is continuing on the side. When they clinical lecturer is also equivalent to assistant professor. When they finish their specialist training, they can apply for senior clinical lecturer, or they apply for an associate professor job, depending on the area of the UK you are in. Now, for me, I came from abroad. I didn't start the training at ST1 level, so I've had to find my own support. Luckily, after I got the training number at ST3, I also got a grant, a PhD grant that's going to pay me a salary as well. So I started doing academics 50% from March and clinical 50%. I've been upgraded to ST6, so I'm going to exit the program at ST6, go to Birmingham and finish my PhD, then come back to finish the final 2 years of the higher training, clinical training. After Birmingham, I'll be looking at applying for a clinical lectureship or an assistant professor job, which will then enable me to carry on. So that is the pathway. The best place to start is at the beginning when you come into the UK, unlike us who are trying to climb the tree from the top. We are here to guide you if you choose that path.
Just to add on to what Francis is saying, I think I would encourage, because many of you obviously listening are medical students, I would encourage you to involve yourself in the research that your university is doing. In every university, you have a professor or somebody who's doing something. Just try and plug yourself somewhere and try and get that experience. If you're thinking going down academic, sort of clinical academician, try and do that from now. Plug yourself in, get to write a paper with the professor or something, collect data, get your name added onto something, because all these things will add up to you demonstrating that you have the, what do they call it, Francis? They call it the
eligibility criteria.
Yes, there's a word they use, that you're showing, you're demonstrating that you want that
commitment, interest,
commitment to specialty. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So just make sure, from this early stage, that you're aligning yourself with what you want to do in the future. Some of us, never had that opportunity to speak to somebody who has been down that road. And you end up sort of jumping up and down, up and down, up and down, and then suddenly you're finding yourself in the middle of nowhere, trying to paddle your way around things. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omar and Dr. Francis. The next question is, please, what are the peculiarities of clinical postgraduate training in Australia compared with the UK? Dr. Francis, maybe you can answer this question together with the next question, which is, how are you able to move your family when you are the one who got Oxford scholarship? Was it a hassle? Is it different if you don't have a scholarship?
Aha, interesting. About Australia, I spent 6 weeks there, and it was one of my options on the table. 8 weeks, and it was one of the options on the table for me. The Australian training system is in most ways similar to the one in the UK. However, whether you, unlike their recruitment being national, that's what I am made to understand, Australia is a continent. So each of the states, if you like, if I can call them that, like New South Wales or Perth, they have their own regional recruitment. So you may find it a little bit harder to get into that system that way, but it's never an impossibility. The other thing about Australia I found interesting is that you get attached to a consultant and you follow them everywhere, whether they are in the private facility or whether they are in the public one. So you are able to follow your consultant when they go to operate privately, and that will still count as part of experience. What a lot of people do is they go for the easier system. They come to the UK, they get their certificate of completed training, CCT, and they get their British citizenship, and then they move over to Canada, or they move over to Australia, or they go to the Middle East. It's easier to follow that pathway for some people than just going straight to the respective countries. Canada, I say, once you have the British CCT, there are places where there's shortages, and they will sign you up, especially for GP. Australia, it should be easy in lots of specialties, but I'm told it's becoming harder as they train their own people as well. Middle East, especially our friends who come from Arab-speaking countries, they find it very easy to move to the Middle East. So yeah, some people for the UK, it's a stepping stone to moving on or out to the rest of the countries.
Thank you so much. So the next question.
The next question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, a very important question, because when I came, if you're single, it's fine. You just pick your rucksack and you move away. So when I came with my wife, and we were all full of hopes and dreams. She had her career going in Kenya. Then we come over here and we find that for her to practice, she's not a doctor, but she's in the medical field. For her to practice, she needed a job to get assessed on. And for this job, for her to get it, it had to be given to a UK applicant or a returning UK citizen or somebody from the EU. And therefore, she ended up not doing what she wanted to do. So that was one of the challenges. She stayed for a while without a job or any other training. Then along the way, she worked in a different sector than the one she trained in. Then she decided that she will do an MPH, which she completed. And eventually, after getting British paperwork, the residency and the citizenship, then we have equal opportunities. So my wife is now able to access and tap the opportunities 6 years on. That might be a shock for somebody who might not be prepared for this. But what it has done for us, we have had 3 children. She's been able to give the children, the one-to-one attention that even if we were in Kenya, possibly the house help would be, most of the time with them. So it has been advantageous on other ways. It's been straining to me because surviving on one income, you have to plan. Yeah. What's the other thing about the whole? Let me try to think that I want to tell you. It's basically that. It's the other way around now. I have colleagues whose the wife is a medic and the partner is a non-medic, and they've come to the UK, and perhaps the partner had a top-notch managerial job in Nairobi or somewhere, and they come here, the guy can't get a job. Maybe he can run a taxi or for the wife to progress. So you guys just have to work together and see what are your objectives as a family. Is this working for you? Can you stomach it? If it's not working, do you want to go backwards home, or do you want to look for a place where both of you will be having equal opportunities? Or like my wife did, do you want to persevere, wait for when the right paperwork comes and you move on? Just to prepare you, that might be things you might want to speak for those who have spouses who are not medic. If you are both doctors, it's an easy pathway. If your spouse is a nurse, it's an easy pathway. Yeah, I don't know whether Tayari or Gadoni or Cheserem have input on that one.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important topic, and most of the time you will not be able to anticipate this before you board the plane to move to the UK. For me, I came here, did a master's degree, so I was protected by that fact that I'm within an institution, so I could control everything in terms of you wake up in the morning, you go to class, you come back, you know exactly what you're doing. But the minute that ends, then you enter into the sort of the real world, it becomes a challenge. Because for me now, when my wife sort of joined me in the middle of my master's degree, when I finished, we had to look for a house. I did not have a job. I was expecting my dad to continue supporting me for a while, anticipating that I'm going to be a doctor and I will earn good money. But that didn't happen very quickly because my dad at some point decided, you know what, you got married, so you sort out yourself, which is fine because it made me realize so many things. And Francis knows some of my escapades. You know, I've done all sorts of things in the UK. I have been a garbage collector. I have been a van driver. I have worked in a factory. I have done everything you can think of, apart from taking people's lives in the UK. But that is something that's vital, because fast forward to now, I'm in a situation where I had my wife. She stayed with me for the longest time, me jumping up and down, going different places. But she finished uni. I brought her here. But then she could not, even with a degree, she could not get a job. It gets to a point where she got tired. It's really frustrating. For me, it's easy. You wake up in the morning, you go to work. You know, your day is sorted. What is she going to do the whole day? You know, she has to go out and go to the shops, come back, take care of the kids, take them to school, come back. One person. You know, she got tired of that and decided, you know, she needs a hiatus. So she's now in Kenya and I'm here. So that puts a strain in your relationship. So before you move, you know, have your goals set, okay, and discuss it with your spouse. Because one of the accusations my wife had against me was, you didn't tell me we were going to go there before we got married. So you tricked me into this. But anyway, that long story short, have a discussion with your spouse, anticipate the hurdles, anticipate the problems, try and anticipate the fact that one of you will have to stay at home. That is the reality. And I'm sure Francis and everybody can say, not a single person that I know in the UK has a house help at home.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the house help will ask for more money or equal to your salary.
Yeah, you'll be paying the same.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for me and my partner, we are both doctors, so it's a little bit different. But we had to come one at a time because you can't afford to come two. So you see, it's also that, you know, I had to come first, get settled, start earning a salary, then the other one comes as well. So lots of long distance, and it's straining. And so even if you are both doctors, it's also, you have to, like what I said, you have to plan financially because it can be a real, yeah, it's a challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can move to the next one.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Gathoni, and that was really nice. So we are getting so many questions about the clubs. So I'm hoping Dr. Gathoni could help us with your email, and then we could liaise you with the students who really want to know more about the clubs.
Yeah.
Because we are having a number of students who are really interested in getting to know more about the clubs.
Yeah, that's fine. That's really anything I can do to help.
Thank you so much. So I would go to the next question now. How much does GPA contribute when I want to master? Dr. Mari, maybe you can tell us more about this.
Sorry, what's the question? How much?
How much does my GPA contribute when I want to master?
GPA, what's sorry?
Like the score, your final score in university, like.
Yeah.
The only time they would want to look at your scores is if you're applying to do a master's degree that's very competitive, because they have so many applicants. For example, like I don't know about you, Gathoni, but for me, sports medicine was very, very competitive, and to get people in, even as a foreign student, is very, very competitive. So they will look at your transcripts and they will look at how well you've done in certain subjects, and with that they will decide whether they will take you on or not. Because one of the things you have to realize is that when an institution takes you, they are hoping that you're going to be a resource to them, in as much as you're there to try and gather a resource from them, if that makes sense. So how much are you bringing on the table? Okay. So you have to consider that. So if there's something that you really, really want to do, work hard in it in undergraduate, get the nice grades, because that you do not know where it will come and be useful for you. And just to add on the question on the PLABs, one of the things that is really, really important in the UK setting is patient safety. Okay, it's got nothing to do with how good you are. It's got nothing to do with your experience. So if you come in, if you've been doing things in a certain way, do not expect that would be what they're looking for. The standard practice would normally be the Oxford Handbook. So the Oxford Handbook, I'm sure many of you have come across it, the Oxford Handbook of Medicine. That would be normally the background knowledge that you need for part one. But in there, what you will find is a lot of the sections are all about safety, all about reaching a stage where the patient is not harmed. So in terms of responding to the question of the PLABs, it's all about communication and safety to the patients. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omari. So I'm going to address the last question to you again, because you talked about research, right? So someone here is asking, for the doctors For the doctors who undertake award-winning research, do they follow the clinical academic route too? Dr. Omari?
I think your pathway is determined by yourself. And then one of the other things that also determines your pathway is what you come across when you get here. When I left Kenya to come to the UK, I thought I was going to be a surgeon. Okay, and then I realized quite quickly that becoming a surgeon in the UK is one of the hardest things you'll ever imagine doing. Okay, so I gave that up, and then I joined physician training, so I was training to be a physician. And then you quickly realize that, well, I quickly realized that that's not my passion. So that meant for me that I had to remove myself from that to go into other things. So for me, I'm in a job right now that requires research experience and a bit of sports and exercise medicine. And the way that I could prove that I can do research is because I did a master's degree. Okay, I applied for a job that required a specialist, and I wasn't a specialist, but I still applied for it. You know, I'm that kind of a person. And when I went to interview, it's the same thing. How can you demonstrate that you like this specialty? How can you demonstrate that you've worked your whole life almost to try and get to this specialty? Okay, that's what they're looking for, the passion into things, and that you're going to be a resource to the facility that's employing you. I hope that sort of in a roundabout way covers the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Omari. I would really like to thank all the panelists for the insights. You really encouraged us. So I think most of the other questions have been answered. We will also send the link to the group, the link to the YouTube account from Sake so that you guys can learn more about it. With that, I'd like to welcome the RIPAB group, and I'd like to welcome Dennis Obino, who is the manager of the RIPAB Healthcare Student Channel. Karibu sana Obino.
Yeah, thank you so much, Njiru. Thank you, Dr. Gathani, Omar, and Dr. Francis for your very nice presentation and the inputs on how to get to practice in the UK. I sure have learned a lot today, and I'd really like to see if guys could put this into practice when they're done. So I'm sharing my screen for just a few minutes. We'll be done in a few. So this is a short presentation on what RIPAB is and what we'd like from you guys to maybe share out or see if you can do it for yourselves. So RIPAB is a project that was started as a partnership between Daktari Online and the Medical Students Associations of Kenya. And we are registered under the International Federation of Medical Students Associations under the medical education systems. We are divided into two. We have the RIPAB Healthcare Students Journal and the Medical Education System. And what I'm going to talk about today is the RIPAB Healthcare Students Journal. So this is a publication journal for healthcare students in general. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing medicine or you're doing nutrition or nursing or dentistry, you can publish with us. So we aim to foster the culture of publications as well as nurture your skills and help you develop more knowledge and skills in research. We do this in a bid to address the shortcomings which we have noticed in our trainings as undergraduate students, where we don't really get to learn a lot about research and don't get to publish and experience that. So you might have seen this call for submissions out there where we're asking for students to submit the original research, whether it's basic research or clinical research, and case studies they've done or they wish to do with us so that we can publish that. We publish free of charge and we don't charge any article processing fees. So what research do we publish? We publish original articles, both basic and clinical research, guest reports, review articles, editorials, and commentaries. For the review articles, this will be done mostly by professionals, and Dr. Francis is here. We might invite you to do a review one of these days. So for you to qualify to submit, you need to qualify as an author, and we have guidelines showing you who an author is. And basically you need to have done most of the work, like a substantial amount of work in whatever you're trying to submit. You must have either helped in the drafting or revised whatever had been drafted for submission, and you should be part of the decision making of the submission. You should be someone who can say, yes, we can submit this, or we can submit this. Yeah. And it doesn't cost you anything to submit with us. And I'll just take you through shortly through how to get to submit with us. We do the peer review in 2 stages. We have the junior peer review and the senior review. For the submission that you give us, we will do the basic scan and see if it meets the requirements. That's a plagiarism check and ensuring that it has all the components that we requested. Then it undergoes the first peer review by 2 peer reviewers. If they have any comments, they'll be given back to you, and you can do the changes and submit again. And then it will go to senior review, which will be done by 2 independent senior reviewers who you can visit our website and see. Most are members of KEDU and other institutions out there. Then once that is done and your submission is accepted, we will publish it and you retain the copyright to that. The publication will be open access, so anyone can actually be able to review it. So our peer review process is double blind. You won't know the reviewers, and the reviewers won't know you as the author. So a short run of the submission process. So this is when you open the rhsj.repub.co.ke portal, you get to log in or create your account. Once you've done that, you go to submissions and start a new submission. You will see this page where you need to check all the submission requirements, which help you prepare your manuscript in a way that is required. Then you select the section you're submitting to, whether it's an original research, which is clinical or basic, or you're doing a case report. Then you can add any comments for the chief editor, and you need to read the copyright statement and acknowledge it. Then once you're done with that, you upload the files for the different parts of the submission. So if you're uploading the article text, you can select the article text and upload. You can add more documents to your submission. Then once that is done, you fill in the metadata, which requires you to give the title, give the subtitle, you give the list of authors. So you can add more authors at this point. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if you can't, you'll just see a place to add more authors. Then you need to give us keywords for your submission, and that is done. You finish your submission, and we will let you know once the review is started and if there are any edits that are required from you. So all communication will be done through email, and you'll be receiving some automated emails. Like once you submit, you receive an automated email confirming your submission and such. So for us, we aim to ensure that we follow the ethical guidelines for both peer review and for authorship. And we try to publish work that has no plagiarism. So that is one key area we're trying to focus on as for ethics. So for you as an author, you need to qualify as an author. You need to be there to have done the research, and then you need to declare any conflicts of interest if you have any at the time of submission. So these are some of our contacts. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram, and definitely sign up on our website, and you'll be receiving the updates from us. Yeah, thank you so much. These are the different campus representatives from your different schools. Thank you, Anjiru, and thank you, everyone. We hope to see your submissions. If you have any questions, I'd like to be really glad to answer them.
Thank you so much, Albino, for that. I hope all of you guys are now well informed about Repub. It's a very good it's a student healthcare journal that's helping students with publishing their research projects. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Benjamin to give a vote of thanks. Benjamin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Wanjiru, and thank you everyone who has been a part of this webinar. I'll start with the speakers. Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. Thank you so much, Dr. Emily. Thank you so much, Dr. Omar. And thank you so much, Dr. Gathoni, for taking us through that comprehensive and insightful discussion on this subject today. I also want to extend my gratitude to the organizing committee, that is both SCOMA and REPUB, for organizing all this, and also to thank all the attendees who have been patient with us since we started until now. I also want to make a few announcements, and the first one will be that we are going to share our a post-webinar form for us to fill and get some feedback from the attendees and maybe the panelists to help us improve the upcoming webinars. We have a series of 8 webinars, including the one that has been today, and we request that you help us to get feedback so that we can improve the subsequent webinars. I also want to inform you that this webinar has been streamed online in YouTube, and the link will be shared to you through emails, and also it will also be uploaded in the Msake YouTube channel in case you want to refer back to it in the future. So we are going to share registration forms for the subsequent webinars. So be alert and be on the watch out for those links so that you can join more of these discussions. Otherwise, I want to thank you all and to wish you all the best as we are going on with the exciting weekend. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Benjamin. I don't know whether any of our panelists has closing comments before we finish up. We would like to thank you for sparing some time. We understand you have a very busy schedule, but you gave in some time to be with us today, and we are grateful for that. Any of the panelists with a comment as we close?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for listening to me ramble, and email me. My email, they'll give it to you, and yeah, feel free to ask any questions. I may not answer immediately, but I'll do my best to respond. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your questions, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you too.
And for me, again, it's thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of my sort of up and down kind of journey in the UK. All I have to say as a parting shot is that when you come to the UK, have to set your goals, but then also have kind of a buffer zone for if things don't go your way. Okay, if you come with a mindset on one particular goal, you might end up being very, very disappointed, especially because the system in Kenya is that by the time that you finish medical school and you finish your internship, you're fairly older than your compatriot in the UK. One of the difficulties I found for me was, for example, being a junior doctor with your senior being much younger than you. You know, it's a very, very challenging situation to be in. So set your goals properly, but then also leave yourself a bit of a buffer. And the last thing is, it's not just your standard medicine that's available here. There's other careers, for example, like the military, the civil service, that you know would be willing to take you on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On my part, I wish to thank the organizers of this meeting for giving us the opportunity to share out with our younger brothers and sisters. It gives us a sense of satisfaction to be able to give back to those who are behind us. And even after this webinar is over, we are open to you guys. Feel free to reach out to us in any way. And I'm also very impressed to see that you're also making steps and initiatives amongst yourselves what Msake is doing and what the last presenter told us about Repub. It's very, very encouraging. So keep going there. Finally, whatever choice you make, whether it is to stay back home, whether it is to leave, just make sure that it is an informed decision. You cannot have all the information, but be ready to adjust and adapt as accordingly. Mine is just to wish you all the very best, but let nobody and let no system make you feel invaluable. So I feel very bad when I see doctors struggling to get employment after investing in ourselves on behalf of the community that we are meant to serve, and then we struggle. I also feel very bad to see doctors picketing to ask to be paid. We don't have time for that. We have time to sit down and think and develop new treatments, and we have more serious things to think about, not just to chase our salaries. So if a system is not serious about you, just know that you can be valued, and yours is a skill that is valued worldwide. That is my parting shot.
All right, thank you so much. I think we can now close that, and hope to see you soon in a series of webinars. Thank you, and good night.
Good night.